UFC 293. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. Main event, Israel Adesanya versus Strickland. Really looking forward to talking about each of the matchups on the card. So make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure to share the video as well. And also note, I'll be live for the entire UFC 293 fight card, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Don't miss the fight companion. And let's get into the first fight of the night. We have Kevin Jousset versus Kiefer Crosbie. I'm picking Kiefer Crosbie to win this fight here. I feel like he can outdog Jousset in this matchup. I do feel as though Jousset, being the city kickboxing guy, has good striking from the outside, does have obviously a kickboxing base, and fights well technically. Where I think there's going to be a bit of difficulty with a guy like Kiefer Crosbie is when we get into the close range. Crosbie has very nice punches on the inside, pretty fast hands with knockout power for sure, and he's willing to engage in bangers, has good durability, coming off of a nice win over Alex Oliveira. And when you kind of preview the past opponents for both of them, I mean, you look at Kiefer Crosbie, Alex Oliveira, that was, an impressive win against a Brazilian savage who was in the UFC. This win wasn't so nice, a 6-12 guy, more of a tune-up fight after he left Bellator. Yes, some losses in Bellator, but at the end of the day, outside of the UFC, especially when he was fighting in Bellator, that's the number 2 promotion in the world. Arguably, it could be PFL or 1 now, but it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is it's high-level MMA. Crosbie has been consistently fighting in for the most part. Whereas Jousset on the other side, yeah, he has good skills. Yes, he's a quality prospect. He's 6'2", so he's got a little bit of a height edge over the side of Crosbie. Hasn't fought those same dogs. Lost here by split decision a year ago against a 6-2 fighter. You see a win there, tune-up fight, decision over someone who's 0-1. And then in this matchup here, Priscus, you're looking at it and you're like, yo, 11-1 guy. That's, pretty nice of a win, even though it was split. The dude was about 40 years of age. He hadn't been consistently fighting. Obviously, was a very strong human being and gave fits to Jousset in that fight and was, still clearly the loser, but went 5 hard rounds with him. And then you look at, the Kit Campbell finish. He's impressive there. So Jousset, I think, is a quality fighter, but Kiefer Crosbie has been more consistently fighting at the higher level. I like that a lot in this matchup. I expect it to be a bit of a scrap. Crosbie bringing the pressure, and we have a pretty action-packed back and forth. As far as the betting odds for it, Crosby's a bit of an underdog here, sitting at plus 120 to Jousset at minus 140. The lines are not crazy to me with, obviously City Kickboxing being the team that Jousset's out of. He's a French fighter. The French had big success in Paris last week. The Irish are going to have some success here after taking some L's over in Paris. I'm going with Kiefer Crosbie to win. I think he can beat Jousset. Method of victory is a little bit on the blurrier side, but what I have written down is decision or knockout. I can kind of see a later TKO for Crosbie after really turning this into a bit of a brawl. I think I'm going to go with Crosbie TKO. I think we're going to get it in the second towards the end or into the third round in a pretty good back and forth. Don't be surprised if there's an evident physical strength edge potentially towards Crosbie inside of the clinch and grappling positions as well. I'm riding with the Bellator ex-fighter. I'm riding with SBG Ireland. I'm going Kiefer Crosbie to win the first fight of the night. I think he can take out Jousset. Though he's good, Jousset, I see him getting hit with punches down the line. I see hooks in close by Crosbie as he closes that gap. I think he'll do some damage. Crosbie for the upset win. Next fight on the card, we have Shane Young versus Gabriel Miranda. I'm going to pick Shane Young here, but he's not been impressive, and he's got 3 down in a row. But he's been in the UFC a bit longer, right? He's got decent experience. He's trained at City Kickboxing. And Gabriel Miranda, on the other side here, I think he looked solid in his loss to Benoit Saint-Denis, and there was exciting moments for him in that fight. But if you watch Benoit fight this past weekend, you know that he will throw caution to the wind looking for a finish. He got a very early second-round finish of Gabriel Miranda in that fight and was beating him up in the first round too. Miranda has good submission skills. He does have solid jiu-jitsu. potentially has the capabilities to lock up something on the ground if Shane Jung gets reckless. But Jung being a technical striker, and Miranda, though having takedowns in the arsenal, I think more so when his opponents, overextending or squaring up. He's not like a Division I national wrestling champion. On the mat, he's dangerous. But Shane Jung, I don't think, is an easy guy to take down and bully. So then when we get into a kickboxing match, Shane Jung is definitely the better technician as opposed to Miranda on the opposite side. Obviously, some higher level experience fighting in the UFC for a while now. Miranda took on Benoit Saint Denis, which is a hellish debut. I'll give him that, and there was moments that I liked it, but I feel he gets sloppy on the feet. He's a sloppy brawler here that's going to be tough, but Shane Jung, I think, put some good shots on him. I could see Shane Jung putting him away, but I'm feeling like Jung wins it on the judges' scorecards with a more conservative attack, playing it on the safer and smarter side. He's 3 down in a row. He's not an old guy. He's 30 years of age. He's younger than Gabriel Miranda in this fight. I think Shane Jung can win this thing. I do. I think he can pull this one off. Now, he is a favorite in this spot at minus 170 to Miranda as a plus 145 underdog. I get that Miranda would be an appealing underdog for some. I don't think you're crazy for seeing a potential path to victory for him. But just note, he gets reckless on the feet. The chin comes up in the air. He's not a super dangerous striker. He's more so going to be tricky with the sub. So if he's unable to get this to the ground, I think Shane Jung has a potential for a knockout in this fight. I really do. I'm kind of going decision or knockout method of victory for this one, but some whisper I'm hearing is potentially a KO for Shane Jung. So I'm going Jung to get the win. I think he's beaten Gabriel Miranda here. He's a favorite in this matchup by a little bit, not too crazy at around minus 170. He should snap the losing streak and get it done. I'm going with the UFC experience over, Miranda in his sophomore appearance. Next fight on the card is Blood Diamond versus Charlie Radtke. I gotta pick Charlie Radtke in this fight. Blood Diamond has shown to be a bit of a limited fighter. Now, he does have very good kickboxing. And his last fight against Orion Koshke obviously is bringing pressure to him. And you know the style you're going to get from a hard-nosed wrestler like that, whereas Blood Diamond can have successful moments on the feet, but he's just not highly skilled in the clinch nor on the ground. Charlie Radtke is a confident striker, but he is obviously going to be more so dangerous on the floor. He's got knockouts. He's got power in his hands. Radtke can do the stand-up at a top tier, I would say. Not maybe top tier, but, a decent tier level. Blood Diamond, in the pure kickboxing realm, he's going to be better. I just feel like he's not UFC caliber. 3-2 record, 35 years of age. Forget the name Blood Diamond. Just look at what his work has been inside of the UFC. Is the fighter there going to take out a Radtke who's on the come up, has solid stand-up, can crack with heavy hands, but also has a submission threat on the floor, can time takedowns well? I think Charlie Radtke can win this fight. 33 years of age, in some sense, right? It's a little bit of like a later blossoming debut in the UFC. I just don't think Blood Diamond is a proficient MMA fighter. And you got a guy who's doing his thing over in CFFC. He's fought at a decent level there. And I think that in this one here, he can get the win too. And when it goes to the floor, I think Blood Diamond's suspect to get strangled, man. I'm going to go Charlie Radtke to win by a rear naked choke. I don't think Blood Diamond can stay on his feet long enough to do huge damage. And even if he is on the feet, I think that Radtke can still touch him up. Just because somebody's got the pro kickboxing realm experience doesn't mean it's going to beautifully translate to just annihilating every MMA fighter on the feet that has stand-up skills too. It's a different game with the 4-ounce gloves. It's not K1. It's not Glory. It's mixed martial arts. We're going Charlie Radtke for the win. As far as the odds, he's a big favorite at 3-1, minus 300. Blood Diamond, Mike Mateta at plus 250. The odds make sense to me here. Blood Diamond has shown to be fairly limited outside of stand-up, and I think Radtke's one of those guys that can do it all fairly well. So I'm going Radtke for the win. I think he's going to get a submission here. Should take out the, fan favorite and Adesanya teammate Blood Diamond. Next fight on the card is Nasrat Haqparast versus Landon Quiñones. If you remember, Landon Quiñones got quickly submitted on The Ultimate Fighter by Jason Knight. and now he gets a chance in the UFC. I'm going to be picking Nasrat Haqparast, but I want to hype up Landon Quiñones a little bit because he didn't get to show his whole tool set on The Ultimate Fighter. He's actually not a bad fighter. I think he's got some skills and potentially is going to be more back-end UFC caliber. He's a guy that fights out of the southpaw stance with, I think, pretty good boxing skills, fights well on the inside. I like the low kicks. I think as far as his stand-up game goes, he's pretty solid. The problem is you're fighting Nasrat Haqparast, who's a guy that can mix up the whole game very well, has been in the UFC a very long time at this point, and is not even a year older than Landon Quiñones. I think Haqparast's well-rounded tool set should lead him to victory. I think on the feet, he can potentially outstrike a Quiñones, mixing in takedowns too, pressure against the cage. I don't think Quiñones is going to have the stopping power to get Haqparast out of there. It takes a certain explosion to really get to Haqparast like that, and he takes a good beating. Haqparast is a tough SOB. I like Nasrat to win. I think Quiñones impresses people. I think that the odds are obviously very wide towards Haqparast for a reason. He's a UFC vet. Quiñones got balls for jumping in to take a big fight here against Nasrat Haqparast in a debut. But it's a very winnable fight for Nasrat. I think that he outworks Quiñones. Could he end up getting a finish? Maybe, but I'm kind of feeling decision, man. You see, he's been a decision machine, in the past 3 wins inside of the UFC. Quiñones not an easy guy to beat, right? I mean, he got subbed quickly by Jason Knight, but when you look at certain situations, right, like it's Ultimate Fighter, right? It's in the house. It's prospects versus veterans. Things could sometimes go weird. Like, I don't think that that's the peak of him. Oh, he got submitted by Jason Knight 50 seconds. He's going to get submitted in 50 seconds here. Because the styles make fights, and I think he could potentially perform better. But don't be shocked if Haqparast subs him. So, Nasrat should win the fight. Nasrat should win the fight. He's a minus 400 favorite. Yeah, wide favorite. Quiñones plus 300. It's a win for Quiñones to get a UFC contract here. And he's going to lose in his debut. I don't think he's beating Nasrat Haqparast in this matchup. I don't see it. I think the kid's tough. I think he's going to give a decent out. And I think he's going to look like, okay, he deserves to be on the roster. But he's not going to beat an experienced vet like Nasrat. Next fight on the card, it's Jamie Mullarkey versus John Makdessi. I'm going to be picking Jamie Mullarkey to win this fight here. He has so many intangibles in his favor. Look at this. 38 years old, John Makdessi. 29 years old, Jamie Mullarkey. Factor there. Then add in, he is taller by 4 inches. Jamie Mullarkey 6 foot to fucking Makdessi at 5'8". He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage to go alongside of it. And then you have a known tricky striking game with Mullarkey, who brings a lot of pressure, is a larger guy-ish, kind of larger-ish guy. I'd say he's a fairly large guy for lightweight, at least compared to somebody like Makdessi, who might be more on the smaller side. I feel like Mullarkey is going to bring pressure to John Makdessi and be able to outwork him inside of the clinch. As far as in the striking realm, I think Mullarkey can land shots from the outside, but I always feel as though we have to credit Makdessi's kickboxing toolset. He does shine in that area, and he's not an easy guy to put away. He's been on the UFC roster forever, it feels like now. I feel like I was watching him in the UFC as a kid, and he's always been a decent journeyman. He's a tough SOB. He's got very good kickboxing. He beat Ignacio Bahamondes in an upset by split decision when Bahamondes entered the UFC. So here against Mullarkey, he takes on another crafty vet. I don't think he's going to beat him. That's not what I'm saying. But he's still a dangerous out. So I respect the tool set of Makdessi. I think Mullarkey will too. A smart game plan is going to be pressuring him a bit against the cage to wear on him. I think there's a physicality, strength advantage from Mullarkey that's going to be evident. I think Jamie Mullarkey wins. Makdessi's still tough, goes long. We're doing 3 full rounds, and I think it's 29-28 potentially. But, 30-27 rings right, too. I feel like the reach advantage on the feet is really going to limit Makdessi to land, like, super effective strikes on the feet. But it's also not going to be, huge enough gap where Mullarkey's just running him out the water striking. In the close range, the physicality will also aid to the win of Mullarkey. So we're going Mullarkey by a unanimous decision. As far as the odds, Mullarkey minus 230, the favorite. I think it's a sensible line. Plus 195, Makdessi. Just looking at, statistical odds, looking at 9 years age difference, there's a very high chance that even if you didn't look at this matchup, the way that the age lines up, the height lines up, the reach lines up, it favors Mullarkey. Then add into the fact that I think he has a style that wins this fight. It's Jamie Mullarkey for the win. Everything is in his favor, including the betting lines. That's why he's the favorite. He should win the fight. He should win the fight for sure here. Next fight on the card. We got Jack Jenkins versus Chepe Mariscal. I'm picking Jack Jenkins to win, but I really like Chepe Mariscal. He's a fucking gutsy underdog that brings fire, and he can wrestle too. Where I think he's going to struggle is dealing with a faster and more technical striker in Jack Jenkins, whose takedown defense is pretty solid. He's got a depth takedown defense. He can stop the attacks coming from Chepe Mariscal, and I think Jenkins is going to give Mariscal fits on the feet, being the cleaner striker, the faster striker, and overall a more technical kickboxing base. Whereas Mariscal, he can sit down and brawl well, and he can chain takedowns. He comes from the wrestling base. The thing is the footwork speed edge that I favor Jenkins with. I think it's going to be hard for Mariscal to get him down. Now, Mariscal's last fight, it was an upset win over Trevor Peek, up a weight class at 155 pounds. And he was able to take down the bigger and stronger Trevor Peek. But note something that is vastly different about Trevor Peek and Jack Jenkins: the technical tool sets and style. Trevor Peek is going to look for the knockout, bang, load up on shots, and square to his opponents, allowing takedowns to hit the hips. He's going to come at you a little too recklessly, and he's not going to be necessarily cognizant of the takedown attempt on the side with Mariscal, whereas Jenkins, 100%, is more of the cerebral mixed martial artist. And that's what I think is going to be a key difference maker, is the fight IQ. Jenkins is going to be able to technically outstrike a Mariscal over a hard 3 rounds. If you're going Jack Jenkins on the betting side and you want to lock him in a parlay, if there's one guy that it's always scary to do it against, it's a junkyard dog underdog type guy like Mariscal, because he's always live as a dog and he gets slept on because he doesn't have the prettiest style. This matchup here, I won't lie to you, I thought in my mind, damn, do I think Chepe's the pick? I don't think he's the pick. I think that Jenkins is going to win the fight. But Mariscal is always such a gutsy and live dog that potentially, what if Jenkins is unable to stop these takedowns? What if the wrestling doesn't look as good? It's not that he doesn't have the defense. We've seen it, that he seems to be good at stopping a takedown and moving and keeping his opponents at bay and not getting bullied towards the back of the cage. But he hasn't fought Chepe Mariscal before. So that's obviously a big X factor in this matchup, because Chepe Mariscal is a guy who's been in there with a fuckload of top tier guys through the regional scene. Maybe not top tier, but high tier. So I'm going to go with Jenkins, but it's definitely more of a nervous pick as far as if you're looking at the lines. I think the Mariscal underdog side is still appealing. Plus 158 for Mariscal to Jack Jenkins at minus 183. I'll pick Jenkins, but I could see Mariscal pulling this one out. So we'll go Jenkins, lower confidence, man. Next fight on the card is the featured prelim of the night. It's Carlos Ulberg versus Jung. I'm picking Carlos Ulberg to win by emphatic knockout and absolutely style on Jung in probably under a round and a half. I don't see it as a close fight. Carlos Ulberg is the vastly superior technical kickboxer with way better counter-striking abilities. He's faster on the feet. He's better with using his range. Jung, when he fought a very top-tier style kickboxer, being Dustin Jacoby, who was a glory kickboxer at one point, was brutally knocked out easily in that fight. He got ran over. I think that Carlos Ulberg is a more scary matchup, because I feel like Ulberg has potentially heavier power than a Dustin Jacoby, who is precise with it, but as is Ulberg, and then he's the better athlete. I think that Jung gets knocked out here. Badly chinned. I don't know if he's chinny, but I have to be somewhat concerned about it. And then even if he's not chinny, when Carlos Ulberg finds the strike, he's probably putting you unconscious. He's got that good sniper kickboxing style, and he's got good counter-striking abilities. He trains with Israel Adesanya. Obviously, he's one of the main training partners with, the 6'4" frame and being just one weight class above him. The guy's extremely high level, and Jung is going to be a sitting duck for a knockout here. It's Ulberg, it's KO, and it's impressive. Minus 265 for Carlos Ulberg. Jung sitting at plus 225 as the underdog. Yeah, it's the Ulberg side. Under 1.5 is plus 120. I think we're going to end up going under. I think Ulberg's chinning Jung. It's going to be an impressive fight because Ulberg is really starting to come into his own. I mean, I'm excited about the wins. Running through Poteria with ease. Running through Negumerianu with ease. And then taking out Tefan Chukwi one shot. This win here against Fabio Cherant was less than impressive, but his improvement in the year and 6 months since that fight, I think, are vast. The dude's good. He's coming into his own at light heavyweight, and he's really figuring MMA out as a former kickboxer. Good stylistic matchup for him. Ulberg, knockout. He's sleeping Jung in highlight reel fashion. Let's jump to the main card. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. It's Tyson Pedro versus Anton Turkalj. I'm picking Tyson Pedro to win, and I've kind of heard rumblings of Turkalj being, a bit of a popular underdog, and we'll bring up the betting lines after the breakdown. I think Tyson Pedro looked kind of mid against Modestas Bukauskas, but that was also not the best version of himself. He seemed off in that fight, just through not only his body language, but his facial expressions. Like, that was a bad performance. People say, oh, you're making excuses for him. I think he's capable of more than that. And then I look at Anton Turkalj. He's fighting Vitor Petrino. He's getting thrown around, taken down, wobbled a bit on the feet. And you can say, yo, but Petrino's an absolute specimen of a beast. Fair point, but I wasn't impressed by Turkalj necessarily in that matchup either. He's a guy that has okay stand-up skills, but I'm going to say definitely shines more so on the ground. Ibu Aslan, win by sub. If you've been watching Contender Series, you know Ibu is coming in like a madman with real heavy hands, and he's an exciting light heavyweight prospect in the UFC. And Turkalj was able to beat him. He strangled him. I believe he strangled him. Actually, don't quote me on it. Yeah, rear naked choke. He did strangle him. I feel like when you look at his ability to weather a storm with Turkalj, it's exciting for a potential underdog. But then when I know Pedro can be calculated for 3 rounds, I know he's gotten some quick wins, but he's got a patient counter style written all over this fight. I don't think he goes crazy on Turkalj, but I think he's going to have an edge in that grappling department. I think he's going to be the slicker and more athletic striker, and I feel like he's going to win the fight. I think Tyson Pedro can pull this one off. I think he's getting slept on. Now, the lines for the fight, obviously Pedro is now a little bit of an underdog. He opened very slight dog, but we saw the line shift completely, and there was big plus money for Anton Turkalj, which now has been bet down because he's a minus 115 favorite. I think Tyson Pedro wins a decision. He's the slicker fighter than Turkalj. I think he can outstrike him and outgrapple him. I'm not writing him off just yet at only 31 after a layoff. Gets a couple wins. The competition jumps up to Modestas Bukauskas, who's an experienced vet. And he loses a decision, but he didn't look great in that fight. He seemed like he didn't want to be there. If mentally he's dialed in and physically everything's good for this fight, he outworks an Anton Turkalj, and I think he beats him by a decision. It wouldn't be crazy, though, if he could pound out a finish. Maybe not pound out, but strangle out a finish. Maybe with some punches setting it up. Because Pedro does have some good finishes in the past. I'm picking Tyson Pedro to win. I think he beats Turkalj. I'm not writing him off yet. And then especially when you do it in Australia, the crowd behind him gets his head straight for this matchup here, taking on Turkalj, who for me hasn't been overly impressive. He's 0-2 inside of the UFC. Granted, Jailton Almeida win, or loss rather. I mean, it's Jailton fucking Almeida. Petrino loss is honestly not bad either. Casio dos Santos win is okay, but I don't know. I'm not that impressed by Casio dos Santos. I remember that fight. And thinking of Anton Turkalj fighting a Tyson Pedro, I think he's outworked in the technical department, and he doesn't have the potential, back pocket trick up his sleeve or whatever the fuck, up his pocket, whatever the fuck. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have the potential to potentially put Tyson Pedro on his back. I use potential too much in that sentence, but I don't think that Anton Turkalj can out-grapple Tyson Pedro, and I also don't feel like he outstrikes him. So unless he lands some chopping overhand punch, which I don't see that, I'm going Pedro for the win by a decision. I think he pulls it off here. I'm not sleeping on him. Next fight, on the card, we got Justin Tafa versus Austen Lane. This is a rebooking. It was actually a no contest last time out. It was, I believe, in Jacksonville, 2 months ago. And I picked Tafa to win by knockout going into that fight. And I was high confidence on Tafa. At that time, I think I called him lock of the week. I did. And the fight was a no contest, so that absolutely sucked. I feel like in this matchup here, I'm picking Justin Tafa to win. But there were a couple very, very early moments by Lane in that fight, which I didn't love for Justin Tafa, being the shorter guy by 6 inches, being at a disadvantage of reach by 6 inches. I'm picking Tafa to get the punch and knock out Austen Lane because that's what I see here. But the tag is more juiced than it was previously. So, I'm not into the betting side. But the actual method of victory, I think Justin Tafa sleeps him. He has good one-shot knockout power. I think he can buckle Lane in this fight here with a hook on the feet. Lane's a good athlete that comes out a bit over-aggressive, uses that athleticism to his advantage. But he's also been chinned in the past. He's been put to bed. He'll flurry inside with the chin up in the air. And I think when you try to do that to somebody that's as dangerous as Justin Tafa, that gets you put unconscious. So I'm going Tafa first round knockout. Could go a little later still. And the line is wider. Minus 211 for Justin Tafa to Austen Lane at plus 181. I'm going to pick Justin Tafa to win by knockout. I think he's going to get it done inside of the distance. Under 1.5 is minus 195. Already a little juiced up. I like Tafa by the KO. The boxing skill set should favor him. He's the younger guy. Yes, he's at a height and reach disadvantage, but Lane's been knocked out before, and I think he's getting knocked out here. Give me Tafa KO. He should sleep Lane in the rematch after their inconclusive first fight that ended with Austen Lane brutally clawing the eyes of Justin Tafa. So he's going to get some revenge for that and put Austen Lane flat out on his back. I do think Tafa gets a KO. Next fight on the card, it's our featured bout. It's Manel Kape versus Felipe dos Santos. You know, Felipe dos Santos is a shoot-the-bucks Diego Lima guy, so I got to give him a shout-out for that. But he's not going to beat Manel Kape. He's way too young for this matchup here in his career. He's a 7-0 fighter that has a good Muay Thai-esque striking skill set. Obviously, being a shoot-the-bucks Diego Lima guy, you know he can do it on the ground too. But when you look into a recent fight, you watch him in LFA, he's kind of getting reckless and brawling. He's a guy that's going to look for the knockout as opposed to letting it come to him, whereas Manel Kape, definitely the better counter striker, definitely the more explosive guy. Add into the fact that he has a shit ton more MMA experience at a high level because pre-UFC, Kape was fighting really good fighters in Ryzen. I think this is a really one-sided fight where Manel Kape can kind of showcase the different level between being a ranked flyweight in the UFC and being a fun, up-and-coming prospect flyweight winning fights in LFA. I think Kape is going to brutally knock out Felipe dos Santos. Potentially it's going to be a highlight reel, but I'm kind of seeing the right hand. Dos Santos gets hit way too much for me, and he does threaten with takedowns against some lower-level guys. But he's never fought near the level of Manel Kape. And yes, you can say he's seen high-level looks in the training room. It's going to be completely different when the lights are on you. When we're at UFC 293 in Australia and you're taking on Manel Kape, who is, I think, a perennial title challenger heading into 2024. He's a very good fighter. He's on a nice 3-fight win streak in the UFC now. He's got a marketing capability. He's got a well-rounded tool set. He's got explosive knockout power. And I think he's going to put Felipe dos Santos to bed in this matchup here. I'm going Kape by KO. Dos Santos just too raw and reckless for my liking. He gets hit too much. And I don't think he's going to have a takedown capability here. Minus 340 for Kape. I think those lines make sense. Plus 280 for Dos Santos. Under 2.5, minus 170, I actually agree with. I think we're going under. So I like Manel Kape by knockout. Yes, he's a big favorite at minus 340, but this is a mismatch. Note that Felipe dos Santos is taking this fight on short notice, filling in for Kara-France, who pulled out of this matchup with a concussion. And that fight between Kape and Kara-France was maybe one of the most exciting fights on this card for me. I was super hyped to see it. Unfortunately, we don't get it because Kara-France gets a concussion, has to pull out. That matchup still really intrigues me, and I think Kape now here, it's going to look more like a tune-up fight, but I think it makes it out to be more of like a statement fight, and I feel like he runs over Felipe dos Santos in brutal fashion. Knockout win, Kape. Co-main event of the evening. It's Tai Tuivasa versus Alexander Volkov. I'm going to be picking Alexander Volkov to beat Tai Tuivasa at home in Australia. And I know, I hate to do it, right? Because Tai Tuivasa always possesses serious knockout power. But Alexander Volkov, as of recent, has looked to be a better version of his previous self with the dangerous kickboxing capabilities and length. But he's getting these finishes. He stopped Rosenstruik, no matter what Rosenstruik felt about the stoppage. And then he also ran over Alexander Romanov with ease. Granted, Romanov looked really fat heading into that fight, but like it was an easy win for Volkov. He lost to Tom Aspinall brutally and then shifted it up forward. Losing to Tom Aspinall, there's zero shame, even in the method that Volkov lost to him. Tai Tuivasa is a bite down on your mouthpiece, brawling striker who will throw up crazy attacks at points like we've seen in the early run of the UFC, flying knees from him and shit. But his best punches are going to be powerful hooks closing the distance and backing a Volkov up. The issue is I see him getting touched up from the outside and having a hard time closing the gap on Alexander Volkov. I feel like there's heavy power on the side of Tuivasa, and I'll say more punching power on his side, but I get a much larger arsenal of weapons with Alexander Volkov in the stand-up department. And then we also take into consideration that there is not a grappling threat, period, from Tai Tuivasa. Height difference, 6'7" to 6'2", with also a 5-inch reach difference, 80-inch reach to 75-inch reach, favoring Volkov. And the guy, Volkov, is a kickboxer from the outside that knows how to use it. I mean, we've seen Volkov forever. I watched Volkov through Bellator looking like the real Drago. Gets to the UFC, looks early on, but has really kind of found his footing as a pretty high-caliber top 10 contender in the heavyweight division. And I hate to say it, but I don't think Tai Tuivasa has a top 10 skill set. I think he's had good matchups. Win over Greg Hardy. Volkov decisioned Greg Hardy. So he didn't knock him out, but it was still a clean win. I guess it was more impressive that it was a knockout for Tai. But Greg Hardy still. Augusto Sakai. Sakai is a mid-tier guy that I was never impressed with previous to his UFC run. Got better in the octagon. And yes, Tai's going to knock him out. Impressive win. Knocks out Derek Lewis. Took damage in that fight. Knocked out. But let's start looking at the losses. Ciryl Gane. Yes, he dropped Ciryl Gane. I know. It's a factor. But he still got absolutely destroyed in that fight. And then he comes back and he got ran over by Sergey Pavlovich. I think Volkov is just going to be too hard for Tuivasa to close that gap on. I'm going to go Alexander Volkov to win. I think that minus 244, it's a little wide for a heavyweight fight where one punch can literally change everything. But I see why the guy on the win streak is minus 244 as opposed to the guy in the losing streak, Tuivasa, at plus money. I like Volkov to win. I'm kind of feeling like he might get a TKO in this fight. I worry about Tai Tuivasa's recovery because he had two brutal back-to-back beatings. I think Volkov could TKO him on the feet here too. He's the better technical fighter. I feel like Tuivasa could get caught with a fucking high kick in this fight by Volkov for some reason. Don't know if that's definitely going to happen. Just an idea that popped into my mind. I like Volkov to win. I'll say he gets a TKO, but it definitely could go longer because Tuivasa is notoriously durable and has a good chin. Volkov is just a better guy with way more weapons, and he's going to be the pick in this fight. Next fight on the card brings us to the main event of the evening. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. It's Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Yeah, I'm picking Israel Adesanya to beat Sean Strickland. Strickland has a very well-rounded skill set, but he's going to choose to engage Adesanya in Adesanya's strongest area, which is kickboxing, because Sean Strickland likes striking. He's a heavy-handed guy that can beat the fuck out of a lot of guys in the UFC. He's a top-caliber fighter in the world. He deserves to be in the top 5 at middleweight. But Israel Adesanya's length is going to be such a large factor. 4-inch reach edge, 3-inch height edge, and even Sean Strickland himself spoke about this matchup. I believe it was with Brendan Schaub. This is some time ago, before it was booked. Well before it was booked. And Strickland talked about how difficult it is to close that large reach gap off of an opponent. And then now add in the fact that Sean Strickland has to overcome a reach gap. He's dealing with a more high tier and technical kickboxer who knows how to use that reach, who's just knocked out the fucking boogeyman, Alex Pereira, with one shot. So you know if Strickland can put out a Poatan, he feels he can put out anyone. I said Strickland, I meant Adesanya. If Adesanya can put out Poatan, he can put out anyone, regardless of, the 3 losses of the past for Israel Adesanya. I feel like he's riding into this fight with higher confidence in his finishing ability than before. And we have Sean Strickland, who's willing to engage in striking, but also makes consistent, I don't want to say mistakes because it's Strickland style, but flaws. He's got consistent flaws of having the hands low and the chin a bit high, looking to throw his power shots. And against lesser opponents, he's able to overwhelm them with his storm and get a stoppage and knock people out. I mean, he did it to Abus Magomedov, who had all this hype coming into that fight. And a lot of people thought that he would beat Sean Strickland. I didn't. I wasn't one of those people. I feel like Israel Adesanya is going to knock Sean Strickland out in this fight. I would love to say that Sean Strickland is going to look to wrestle Izzy. I don't really feel as though that's going to happen. And if he did look to wrestle Izzy, I also feel as though the grappling resistance from Adesanya would be rather impressive too, because he's obviously notoriously hard to put on his back. So I'm going to go Israel Adesanya to win. I'm going to pick him to KO Sean Strickland on the feet. I don't think it's going to be quick like the Alex Pereira fight. I think we go a little longer. I can see second or third round knockout, but the way that Sean Strickland is going to be willing to throw caution to the wind, looking to close that gap and land big shots on Adesanya, is the same thing that's going to get him knocked out. Kind of seeing like a counter lead hook, flatlining him, similar to what Poatan did to him. I'm kind of seeing Adesanya potentially landing the same shot. The win is for the fans this weekend, though, because Sean Strickland is going to deliver some banger lines throughout media day, throughout the press conference. This is an amazing pay-per-view main event because there's going to be beef going into it. And it's going to be an intense atmosphere when it comes to the actual fight. And I think the crowd's going to go nuts when Adesanya takes Strickland out. But the odds are really wide. Sean Strickland's a very good fighter. You can argue he beat Jared Cannonier. So he is top-tier middleweight. Plus 475 for Strickland. Minus 650 for Adesanya. Over or under? I think we're going under 4.5 at minus 120. I don't think we're going distance. I do think Adesanya finds the counter strike and knocks out Sean Strickland. I can see it happening here. Regardless of Strickland's normal durability, it's not so much about can he not take a shot that he sees coming. It's the one that he won't. And I think Adesanya can land that type of punch, same to what an Alex Pereira did to him and brutally knocked him out. So we're going Adesanya by KO. I got an and still champion. The belt is not coming back to America. It's staying over, down under. It's staying over in New Zealand. And I'm excited for this card over in Australia. I think it's going to be a banger with Adesanya getting the cherry on top win in a bit of a beef matchup with Sean Strickland. So we're going the favorite. We're going Adesanya to win the main event. Guys, it's a damn good card. I'm excited as hell for UFC 293. I'm going to have content coming out throughout the entire week for it, so I look forward to that. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Make sure you guys smash that like button if you haven't. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure to share the video as well. Let me know what you thought of the picks in the comments. Throw your main event pick out for sure. I'm guessing is 98% Adesanya picks. Throw me some of your favorite picks on the card. And if you have nothing to say in those comments, but you just enjoy the content as always, drop a W in the chat to boost the algorithm for your boy. Much love, my people. Thank you all for passing 21,000 subscribers, man. We made it. The community has passed 21K, so I'm happy as hell about that. Much love, everyone. I'll see you every day this week because the daily content does not stop. So keep it locked in right here at MMA Experts. If you haven't turned the post notifications on, make sure you do. And don't leave them on personalized. Put them on all so you don't miss a video because you want to be notified of everything because I got a ton coming out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace, everybody.